So aside from the commercial aspect of Hollywood, was there anything else that attracted you to Hollywood, or did you just prefer the integrity and the artistic value of French film?
Well, I mean, Hollywood, what I loved was sunshine in California. I mean, that's great. Can't beat that. But otherwise, I really love the personal atmosphere of making films in Europe.
Okay.
The fact is that I can do what I want to do as an artist and as a filmmaker. Whereas in Hollywood, it's a big business. I enjoy working in Hollywood. I would love to do a film there now and then, but I don't want to live in Los Angeles or be a director who makes only Hollywood movies, you know. But I admire Hollywood. You know, I'm not anti-Hollywood. I think they make some terrific films. And one of my favorite films is Masquerade, which I did for MGM, and it was a great experience, you know. They do have the talent. They know how to tell stories, the Americans. Why is the American cinema one of the most successful cinemas in the world? Is they're masterful storytellers. And they know how to communicate throughout the world, you know, because often European films speak primarily to European audiences. You know, they're very intimate. Not everybody can react to French movies, for example. You know, people say, well, French movies, they talk too much, and they're too, you know, they're always regarding themselves, and, you know. And so, I mean, American films have that talent of storytelling, and they know how to tell the stories visually, and that I do respect. I do respect that.
Yeah, that's one thing, the way that Hollywood has evolved in that way. But most of our viewers, they don't really know how French film has evolved. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, you know, I came into film, as I said earlier, because of the French. So I'm grateful to the French. And I remember my first French movie, I must have been 17 years old, and there was a little art theater in Los Angeles. And my professor of anthropology, Edmund Carpenter, who's a great anthropologist and became a good friend, said, let's go see a European film. I'd never seen a European film. And it was 400 Blows by François Truffaut. I was amazed. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. It was so different than Hollywood that it was a shock to me, but a positive shock. I said, well, hey, film can do something else too. There's another dimension to film I didn't understand. And that was the cinema, and we call that New Wave, French New Wave, in the early 60s. And it was the first time that filmmakers left the studio, took the camera into the streets, and made films about people in everyday life. And it was a revolution. And it influenced a whole generation of American filmmakers afterwards. And that was French cinema then, and that's the French cinema that I loved and that affected my life. Today it's different. I think today the French film industry is not what it should be. I think it's become, it's made for the small screen. The stories don't interest me much anymore. I don't think it's evolved the way it should, and it's lost its international market because, you know, in the 60s and 70s, French New Wave films affected a lot of people throughout the world. It was a revolution to all filmmakers. French cinema doesn't have that force anymore. I think when I see a French movie today, often I said, well, this is like a TV movie. You know, it's made for a small screen. And I think today, with our new technology, we have to think big. We have to think big screen. We have to think of 3D. We have to think about transmedia, about a film. Film has outgrown a small screen. We have to, I think there's a new way to think. And this is why when 7 years ago I was asked to come in and take over the International Film and Television School in Paris, it was very exciting to me because I felt there was a time in my life now that I could contribute and maybe change things a little bit, you know, in a humble way, because, you know, I'm not a revolutionary thinker, but I said, you know, I do have 40 years of experience, and I'm still passionate about what I do. I mean, film, I could die for film still, you know, like when I was 17. It's the same thing, and that's what's really important, because these are areas where passion is the #1 quality. You have to understand that it's so difficult, film, that you have to have that passion. And I said, this is what I want to do, is have a film school, and it's expanded into film, television, and new media, because today you don't talk about film. Film doesn't even exist anymore, you know, it's all on a chip. But it's still, you have to think different. We have to think outside the box, and this is why it's so important. And the digital age has totally transformed our industries. First of all, it's eliminated so many traditional jobs, and it's created other jobs, and we have to adapt to that. And I think the role of schools have become so important today, because it's only in schools where we can transmit this knowledge. In the old days, I'll give you an example. In the camera department, you had 5 people. You had the cinematographer, the camera operator, the first assistant who was the focus puller, the camera loader who loaded the film, and then the intern who did anything, you know, would buy the sandwiches and so forth, whatever. But you all worked together, and you worked with the master, the cinematographer, and you did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, who knows? And you were working with somebody, you watched them work on a daily basis. Today, it's the same thing in the editing room. Before, you had your editor, the assistant editor, a second assistant editor, and an intern. So you'd be sitting next to a master learning the craft. Today, in the editing room, you have your editor and your assistant editor who comes in at midnight and loads the machine and then leaves in the morning when the editor comes in and edits. So how can you learn? So this is how today in our schools we've replaced the mentor kind of relationship, and we transmit our knowledge within this academic area. So this is why we have to adapt in schools such as our school in Paris, EICAR, or even at Manipal here. It's so important now is to bring working professionals into our schools and to transmit within these schools and to think outside the box, because things are changing so rapidly today. But the interesting thing is the fundamentals are the same. I, as a filmmaker, know that the rules of visual storytelling have not changed for 3,000 years. Aristotle in ancient Greece laid out the rules, and they're the same rules, basically. Our eye is different, our language is different, but the rules are the same, the fundamentals are the same. So this is why when we talk about, and I use film as a film school, for example, but you can apply this to new media, to broadcasting, to journalism. The fundamentals are always the same. And in film, you have to know how to edit, you have to know how to light, you have to know how to, the principles of directing, the principles of screenwriting. So all these things are the same. So this is why my life has changed. And at the same time, as an artist, it's a wonderful way to recharge your batteries, because our inspiration also comes from people, younger people, who are also discovering these things, because they have an energy that maybe we don't have anymore, but we have that experience. And it's really interesting. It's a very interesting time for all of us.
Many of our students are interested in this particular field of film. So could you please, in brief, tell us a little more about your film school, EICAR, and the kind of courses it offers?
Boy, that's a program in itself here. Well, EICAR, as I said, we have a bachelor's and a master's program. And the bachelor's program, it's a 3-year program, as it is here, I believe. And our master's is a 2-year program. And the first year is we make sure that you really know what I call the fundamentals, which are editing, cinematography, directing, screenwriting, and production. And production is very, very important. And I really emphasize production in school because to be successful in new media, television or cinema, you have to have business notions, if I can put it that way. Because it's always important to understand that money is a major factor in what we do, and things are very expensive. It doesn't mean that you diminish the artistic aspect, but you really need a very strong foundation. So this is why the first year you have those 5 disciplines. I want to make sure that you really have that visual storytelling down pat. You know it, you understand it, and so forth. And that you know what production is, you know how to put together production. It's all about organization. How do you succeed or fail in a film today? If it's not organized, if it's not prepared, then there's no way you can make it work. And whether it's a television show, or whether it's a feature film, or whether it's a music video, the foundation is the production too. You really have to know how to organize and then execute it and then follow it through in post-production. So these are the first year basically are mastering the fundamentals. So the year is divided into 3 semesters. And the first semester are regular classes. The second semester are intensive workshops with high-profile, internationally renowned professionals. Mm-hmm. And the third semester, which is the longest, is you're out there making films, producing TV shows. And that runs from May to the end of July. And it's also your final examination because it's a way to evaluate what you've learned the first 2 semesters. But at the same time, that's where you learn the most because you're actually practicing and making mistakes. And this is the luxury and the uniqueness of film school and media school is you can make mistakes and you don't get punished. You don't like get fired and can never work again because this is the place to make those mistakes. Is in school, is to take a chance, to experiment. So this is why this is our richest period. So believe me, 3 years of that, when you leave our school, I guarantee you, if you complete successfully the program, you're ready to go out and get a job. Don't think about getting a doctorate or, you're ready, go to work. So this is kind of, and each year is different, of course, because that's the first year, and the second year, you have a little bit of the same, but it's a little more specialized because then you start to say, well, maybe, I really love editing. Because what happens in film schools particularly is everybody wants to be a director, because they don't know the other jobs. And all of a sudden, because we force them to take these classes, and at the same time when you make your film and you work in the production period, you don't necessarily make your film, you work on films. So between April to the end of July, you may be pushing the dolly on one film, you may be hanging lights on another film, you may be making the sandwiches for the crew on another film, everybody does different things. So what this means, the fact that you've studied different things, that you've done different jobs, is you may discover something you didn't even know existed. So this is really exciting because you say, I want to be a director like 99% of the people who go to film schools. And at the end, you might say, gee, I love costume design, or I love doing the sets, or I love editing. So your final year, you'll really specialize more or less in the things that you've discovered that you maybe want to do. So we kind of guide you.
Okay, so I think that's about it. We've asked
what else can I say?
Everything. Thank you so much for being part of Studio 60.
Yeah.
It was an honor talking to you.
But it was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank
Thank
you.
you.